I was 18 when everything in my life felt too big for me. My body, my voice, my dreams, even my failures. In our small American town of Maple Ridge, the only thing people ever seemed to remember about me was how loud I was. Loud laughter, loud footsteps, loud mistakes. I towered over most of my classmates, but inside I felt small, almost invisible in all the wrong ways. The football team was supposed to be my escape, the place where my size actually meant something. But even there I managed to disappoint. I skipped practices, rolled my eyes at coaches, and laughed off every warning. Until the day Coach Miller called me into his office. He sat behind his desk, arms crossed, his eyes heavy and steady like he'd already done the math and didn't like the result. "Evan," he said quietly, "you're running out of chances. One more missed practice, and you're off the team. I need discipline, not excuses." That word, discipline, hit me like a punch. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but nothing came out. What excuse could cover all the times I chose to sleep instead of sweat? To complain instead of try? I nodded and walked out, the hallway stretching long and empty, echoing my footsteps like reminders of every bad choice I'd made. But things got worse. A week later, after a humiliating performance during a scrimmage, 2 fumbles, 1 missed block, and a fall that the entire school still replayed in memes, I was sure my football dream had died right there on the field. I sat alone under the bleachers, staring at my hands, wondering why they never listened to me when I needed them most. Everything felt blurry. My future, my place in the world, even who I was supposed to become. That's when a shadow fell across the dusty ground. "You done hiding?" a low voice asked. I looked up to see Coach Miller standing there, arms still crossed, his expression unreadable. "I'm not hiding," I muttered. He raised an eyebrow. "Then what are you doing?" I didn't know. So I shrugged, the same useless shrug I'd used all my life to avoid honesty. Coach sat beside me, elbows on his knees. For a moment, we just listened to the wind rattling the metal seats above us. "Evan," he said finally, "you're not weak. You're just scared to start." I froze. No lecture. No yelling. Just a truth sharp enough to split me open. He continued, "Everyone thinks strength comes from muscle. But real strength? It comes from showing up when it's hard. When it hurts. When you're tired. You want to play? Then prove it. Be here tomorrow. Succinct. I'll know everything I need by who shows up." He stood, dusted gravel from his hands, and walked off without waiting for my answer. I stared after him, my heart pounding. 6 a.m.? I could barely wake up for school at 8. But something in me shifted, not a roar, not a spark, just a small, anxious tremble. Maybe this was my last chance. Maybe this was the moment everything changed. The next morning, before the sun even touched the stadium lights, I ran across the empty field, breath burning, legs heavy, but body moving forward. Coach Miller was already there. He didn't smile. He didn't clap. He just nodded. "Good," he said. "Let's begin." And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I'd begun something too. The sky over Maple Ridge was still dark when I stepped onto the field for my second morning of punishment, well, training, as Coach Miller called it. A thin layer of frost glittered on the grass like broken glass. My breath came out in clouds. My legs already hated me. Coach stood in the middle of the field, hands behind his back, looking calm, almost peaceful, like he enjoyed watching teenagers suffer before sunrise. "Morning," he said with a nod. "Let's see if yesterday was luck or choice." I didn't answer, mostly because I was too tired to form real words, but also because something in me didn't want to break the silence. The field at 6 a.m. felt like a different world, one where excuses couldn't survive, because no one was awake to listen to them. Coach tossed me a weighted sled. "We're starting light." I wasn't sure what light meant to him, but it definitely didn't match any definition in a dictionary. My legs shook as I pushed the metal forward, every inch feeling like a mile. Coach walked beside me, not shouting, not encouraging, just watching. When I reached the end zone, he finally spoke. "You have good power," he said. "But power without control is chaos." I swallowed air. "So, I'm chaos." He shrugged. "Right now? Yeah. But chaos can become something, if you shape it." I didn't know what to say, but something about the way he said it made me want to keep going. So I pushed again. And again. My arms burned, my back screamed, my lungs felt like they turned to fire. But every time I stopped, Coach simply nodded and said, "Again." There was no praise, no motivational speeches, just work. Hard, cold, honest work. By the time the sun climbed up behind the bleachers, my hands were shaking. Sweat ran down my face despite the freezing air. I felt like I might collapse right there on the turf. Coach looked at me closely. "You showed up," he said. "That's the first victory." It wasn't much, but it felt like a spark in my chest, small, warm, stubborn. School that day was a blur. My classmates joked about how tired I looked, how I'd probably fall asleep during math, how I wasn't built for discipline. Maybe a week earlier, their words would have crushed me. But now, I had something none of them had. I was trying. Really trying. And it felt strangely good. By the third morning, I wasn't dragging myself to the field, I was running. I didn't know why. Maybe I didn't want Coach to think yesterday was a fluke. Maybe I wanted to see if I could get through a workout without feeling like I'd die afterward. Coach raised an eyebrow when I arrived early. "Didn't think I'd see you beating the clock." I smirked, wiping sweat from my forehead. "Didn't think you'd see it either." He gave a short laugh, the first sign he might actually like me. But the workouts only got harder. I pushed sleds, pulled ropes, ran drills until my legs turned numb. Sometimes I fell. Sometimes I swore under my breath. Sometimes I wondered if Coach could read my mind because he always knew the exact moment to say the exact thing I didn't want to hear. "Get up. Don't quit now. You're stronger than you think." Pain is not failure. One morning after I collapsed onto the grass, chest heaving, Coach crouched down next to me. "You know why most people don't change?" he asked. I shook my head. "Because change hurts. Growth hurts. Discipline hurts. People avoid it because it's easier to stay the same. But you," he pointed at me, "you're showing up despite the pain. That's strength." Something inside me cracked open. Not in a painful way, more like breaking through a wall I didn't know I'd built. For the first time in years, I started to believe I wasn't hopeless. That maybe, just maybe, I was someone worth fighting for. But progress didn't mean perfection. One morning after a long night of studying, I overslept. When I finally sprinted to the field, 20 minutes late, Coach was standing with his arms folded, face unreadable. "You quitting on me?" he asked. No, I just... Evan." His voice cut clean through my excuse. "Discipline means keeping promises to yourself. Not just to me." My stomach twisted. I hated that I'd disappointed him. But worse, I hated that I'd disappointed myself. "Get on the line," he said. "We're running." We ran until the sky turned gold. Coach didn't shout, didn't scold. He just watched, letting the consequences speak for themselves. By the end, I was barely standing. But when I looked at him, he nodded. "Good," he said. "Now you know what it feels like to fall and still finish." And somehow, that felt like the biggest victory of all. Days turned into weeks. Mornings into habits. Pain into discipline. And discipline into something I didn't expect, confidence. My muscles grew stronger. My steps steadier. My voice deeper but calmer. And when I looked in the mirror, I no longer saw the kid who hid behind excuses. I saw someone becoming solid. Someone becoming a rock for the first time. Someone I actually recognized. I didn't know it yet, but these mornings were shaping me into a person who could stand, not just for himself, but for others. And the moment to prove that would come sooner than I thought. The cold mornings of Maple Ridge didn't feel so cold anymore. Maybe because my body had finally adapted, or maybe because something inside me burned hotter than the frost. Every sunrise found me already on the field, waiting for Coach Miller, feeling like the version of me who used to sleep in no longer existed. Small victories began stacking up like bricks, each one building something sturdier inside me. I could push the sled farther, lift more, run longer, fall less often, complain almost never. Almost. Because despite every step forward, there were days when doubt crept in like fog, slow, quiet, impossible to ignore. One morning, after a particularly brutal drill that felt more like punishment than training, I collapsed on the turf. My legs trembled uncontrollably. Sweat dripped down my face, mingling with cold air that stung my skin. Coach stood over me. "What are you waiting for? Sunrise applause?" I groaned. "Coach, I think my soul left my body." "Good," he said. "Now you can train without it slowing you down. Get up." I laughed despite myself and forced my legs to move. Strangely, they listened. School started to feel different too. Not easier, just different. I walked with more intention, held myself straighter, stopped shrinking into doorways or pretending I wasn't as noticeable as I was. People noticed. Seniors who barely knew my name began nodding at me in the halls. A few teammates even asked if I'd been working out or something, like it wasn't obvious from the way my shirt sleeves stretched just a little tighter. But the biggest change wasn't in how others saw me, it was in how I reacted to them. I didn't flinch at jokes anymore. Didn't apologize for taking up space. Didn't pretend I didn't care about football. Because now I did care. Deeply. And that was when the first cracks appeared. One Thursday afternoon, when the season was creeping close, Coach announced that morning workouts would now include weekend sessions. Some of the guys groaned. I didn't. For ready, more than ready. I wanted to prove that everything I'd been working toward wasn't temporary. But Coach studied my face carefully. "Evan, you sure you're ready for the next level?" "Yeah," I said instantly. Too instantly. He narrowed his eyes. Being ready isn't the same as being confident. And being confident isn't the same as being honest. I swallowed. I can handle it. We'll see. And we did. The next morning, the workout hit me like a truck. Rope slams. Wind sprints. Burpees. Sled pushes twice as heavy as before. Things I had never done, not even on my best days. Halfway through, my chest began tightening. A dizzy wave washed over me. My legs turned to jelly, and when I tried to steady myself, they gave out completely. I crashed to my knees. Coach didn't rush over. He didn't call my name. He didn't even look surprised. He just said calmly, "Falling isn't the problem. Staying down is." I wanted to rise. I really did. But my arms shook, my breath hitched, and for the first time since we'd started training, fear, not pain, held me in place. "What if I can't do this?" I whispered. Coach knelt beside me, not close enough to comfort, just close enough to confront. "You've done harder things," he said. I shook my head. "No, Yes," he cut in. "You woke up. You showed up. You kept coming even when nobody believed in you, not even yourself. That's harder than any drill I could throw at you." His voice softened, not with pity, but with truth. "You're not weak, Evan. You just hit a limit today. And limits are invitations." Invitations to what? To push past them. He stood and held out his hand. I stared at it for a moment, then took it. My legs wobbled, but I remained upright. Good, he said. Again. And we went again. That day, I didn't win. Didn't impress anyone. Didn't set a record. But I didn't quit. And that was enough. But the cracks weren't finished with me. The following week, I had a huge chemistry test. I tried to study after practice, but my mind kept drifting back to drills, to footwork, to the weight of discipline. By midnight, I still hadn't slept. By morning, I could barely lift my head. I failed the test. When the teacher handed it back, a giant red F at the top, my stomach dropped. For a second, I felt like the old me again. The kid who never followed through, who always messed up, who couldn't get anything right. After school, I sat on the empty field, hunched over the paper. Coach walked up behind me. "You look like someone stole your lunch money." I held up the test. I failed. He studied my face. Okay. You're acting like the world ended, he said. It didn't. But I tried. And you'll try again, he said. Falling is part of the process. You think greatness comes from winning everything? It comes from refusing to stay broken. He tapped the test with his finger. Next time, study smarter. Manage your time. Discipline isn't just physical. It's everything. I sighed. Feels like I'm juggling too much. That's good, he said. Means you're alive. Despite myself, I smiled. Barely, but I did. By the end of the month, I was stronger in every way, but also stretched thin, tested, humbled, reshaped. Every small victory came with a small setback. Every step forward came with a stumble. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Because discipline wasn't just becoming a habit. It was becoming me. And the next phase of my journey, becoming someone others could rely on, was about to begin. By the time October rolled into Maple Ridge, the air felt sharper, like every breath carried a hint of challenge. The trees around the field burned bright red and gold, and every morning I trained under their colors, feeling like the world was changing right alongside me. But the biggest change wasn't the weather. It was me. For the first time in my life, people started coming to me for help. It began with my little brother, Tyler, a skinny 12-year-old who looked like he might blow away in a strong wind. One evening, I found him sitting on the porch steps, shoulders slumped, backpack open beside him. "What's wrong?" I asked. He sniffed. "I'm gonna fail." I sat beside him, the wooden steps creaking under my weight. A few months ago, I would have shrugged, told him to ask Mom, or pretended I was too tired to care. But not now. Now, I understood what it felt like to be afraid of failing. To feel small. To want to quit. "Show me," I said. His eyes widened. "You know math." "Not really," I said with a laugh. "But I know trying. Let's start there." We worked until the porch light flickered on. And even though neither of us was a genius, Tyler smiled at the end, saying, "Thanks, Evan. You're different lately." Different. A word that used to scare me. Now it felt like a badge. People at school noticed too. One day after practice, a freshman on the team, Miles, a kid barely big enough to hold his helmet, came up to me. "Evan," he asked nervously, "can you show me how to, block without falling?" He blushed so hard I thought he might faint. "Yeah," I said. "Let's do it." I spent the next 20 minutes demonstrating footwork, balance, hip drive, everything Coach drilled into me for months. Miles stumbled a lot, but he kept trying. And every time he fell, I heard Coach's voice in my head. Falling isn't the problem. Staying down is. Miles didn't stay down. And that made me proud, not just of him, but of myself. Because someone actually trusted me enough to ask for help. The guy who used to run from responsibility now ran toward it. But the real test came one Friday afternoon. We were on the field for regular team practice. The wind whipped across the grass, carrying that sharp autumn bite. The drills were intense but familiar, the kind of work that once broke me but now felt like a challenge I could meet head-on. During a blocking drill, one of the seniors, Grant, the loudest trash talker on the team, kept shoving Miles too hard. Not football hard. Mean hard. Miles hit the ground, gasped for breath, and tried to get up. Grant laughed. "Come on, little dude. Stand up. Or go home." Something inside me snapped. I walked over. "Enough." Grant turned, smirk twisting across his face. "Relax, hero. We're just playing." "That's not playing." He scoffed. "Kid needs to toughen up." "No," I said, feeling my voice deepen. "He needs teammates who don't break him before games even start." The field went quiet. Even Coach Miller watched. Grant stepped toward me, shoulders squared. "What, you think you're in charge?" "No," I said calmly. "But I am responsible." Grant stared at me, waiting for me to back down. I didn't. Coach finally blew his whistle. "Grant, water break. Evan Miles, run the drill again." Miles looked at me with something like relief. And I realized something important. Strength isn't loud. Strength isn't cruel. Strength lifts people. And for the first time, I felt strong. As weeks passed, my role on the team shifted. I wasn't just the big kid with potential. I became someone the others looked to during drills, during games, even during rough days in school. One afternoon, Coach called me aside after practice. "Walk with me," he said. We circled the field while the late sun dipped behind the bleachers. "You've grown," he said. "Not just in muscle. In presence." I didn't know what to say, so I just listened. "You're becoming someone people trust," Coach continued. "Someone solid. Someone steady." I swallowed. "Feels weird. Good weird but weird." He chuckled. "Leadership always feels weird the first time you step into it." "I'm not a leader," I said quickly. He stopped walking, turned to face me and said, "Leaders aren't chosen. They're revealed. And you're revealing yourself every day." The words hit me harder than any drill. Because a year ago, no one would have used leader and my name in the same sentence, unless the sentence was, "He'll never be a leader." But now, I wasn't so sure anymore. At home, I helped Tyler with homework. At school, I helped teammates train. On the field, I helped younger players stand tall. And in all of it, I felt, maybe for the first time, that I was becoming someone others could lean on. The version of myself I used to run from was becoming the version I was proud to be. But discipline builds strength, and strength brings responsibility. And responsibility sets the stage for the biggest challenge yet. The regional championship. The place where everything, every sunrise workout, every failure, every bruise, every moment of doubt, would be tested. And I had no idea that what happened there would change me forever. The day of the regional championship arrived wrapped in cold November wind. Maple Ridge High had never felt so alive. Banners snapped in the breeze, students painted their faces blue and white, and the stadium buzzed with a mix of nerves and hope. I stood on the field, helmet in hand, staring across the turf at the biggest team we had ever faced. They were fast, powerful, and ruthless, everything a champion team should be. A few months ago, the sight of them would have crushed me. But not now. Now I felt steady, grounded, solid, like a rock. Coach Miller approached me, placing a hand on my shoulder. His grip was firm, warm, grounding. "You ready?" he asked. "I am," I said, and I meant it. He looked at me long enough to make sure it wasn't bravado. Then he nodded. "Whatever happens today," he said, "play with character. That's what lasts." The whistle blew, and the game exploded into motion. The first quarter was a blur of noise and adrenaline. Our opponents were as tough as rumor promised. Strong linemen, aggressive defense, brutal tackles that rattled bones. But we didn't break. Not yet. I blocked harder than I'd ever blocked in my life, feeling every lesson, every 6 a.m. drill, every fall and rise in my muscles. When our quarterback stumbled, I grabbed his arm and pulled him up. "I got you," I said. And I meant it. By halftime, the score was close, closer than anyone expected. Our fans were roaring, coaches shouting plays, teammates slapping my helmet and yelling that we could win this. But something in the air felt heavy, like the climax of something bigger than a football game. The third quarter hit us like a storm. Their offense found a rhythm and punched through our line twice. Suddenly the scoreboard screamed a painful truth. 28-14. A 2-touchdown gap. My stomach twisted. I could feel doubt creeping into my teammates, slithering into the huddle. "We're not finished," I said, louder than I meant to. Miles looked at me with wide eyes. "You think we can still win?" I took a breath. The cold air burned. "Winning isn't the point," I said, hearing Coach's voice echo in my chest. "Finishing is. Fighting is. We've worked too hard to quit now." Their shoulders straightened. Their eyes sharpened. We pushed back, step after step, play after play. With 5 minutes left, we scored. The stadium erupted. 28-21. One touchdown away from tying. One miracle away from rewriting everything. The final drive was a battle. We moved inch by inch, every yard earned like climbing a cliff. The clock ticked down mercilessly. 2:40. 1:39. 0:58. My lungs felt like fire, my legs like iron. But I kept pushing, blocking, shouting encouragement, becoming the anchor the team needed. Then, disaster. On a critical play, our quarterback's pass slipped through a receiver's hands. A defender grabbed it and ran. I chased with every ounce of strength I had left, but he was too fast. The whistle blew. Turnover. Our chance vanished. The stadium deflated. Our sideline fell silent. My heart sank. And yet, I didn't feel anger. Just a strange, heavy quiet. Because deep down I knew. This was the moment Coach had been preparing me for. Not victory, but how to face defeat. When the final whistle ended the game, the scoreboard read 28-21. We lost. I stood in the center of the field as fans shuffled out. My teammates dragged themselves toward the locker room, heads down, shoulders slumped. I stayed. Coach walked to me slowly, hands in his pockets. "You okay?" he asked. I swallowed. "We could have won." "Yes," he said simply. "And today you didn't." The wind cut across the field. I stared at the grass, blinking away frustration. Coach stepped closer. His voice was quiet, but unwavering. "Look at me, Evan." I looked. "You think this was failure?" he asked. "We lost," I said. "And I worked so hard." "And that work changed you," he said. "That's the victory." He pointed to my chest. "Winning isn't about the scoreboard. Winning is the person you become when the scoreboard isn't in your favor." His words wrapped around me like armor. "You're stronger. You're disciplined. You're someone others can rely on. You didn't win the game today," he paused, "but you won yourself." Something in my chest loosened. Something that had been tight for years. The fear of not being enough. The fear of trying and failing. The fear of disappointing everyone. It all melted. For the first time in my life, I felt proud. Even in defeat. Especially in defeat. Later, in the locker room, the younger players looked lost, broken. Miles sat with his helmet in his lap, eyes wet. I walked over, sat beside him, and nudged his shoulder. "We didn't lose," I said. He frowned. The score doesn't decide who you are," I said. We fought. We finished. And we'll come back stronger. Miles nodded slowly, hope flickering back into his eyes. In that moment, I realized something powerful. I wasn't just stronger. I wasn't just more disciplined. I wasn't just different. I was the person Coach believed I could be. The person I never thought I could become. A rock. Steady. Reliable. Unbroken. Weeks later, Coach invited me to speak to the freshman team. Me, the kid who used to hide under bleachers. I stood in front of them, heart pounding but voice steady, and said, "If someone like me can rise from excuses and fear, then so can you. Strength isn't muscles. Strength is showing up when it hurts. Strength is getting up when you fall. Strength is becoming someone others can lean on. Be your own rock first, then be theirs." Their faces, wide-eyed, hopeful, told me everything. I had become what I needed most when I started this journey. And my story wasn't ending. It was just beginning.